Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed update on Invest 91L/PTC number 6 for Sunday, September the 8th, 2024. Also, if you're new to the YouTube channel and you really like these detailed tropical weather updates, please consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and sharing this video with your family and friends on social media. So here's a look at the latest GOES 16 True Color Visible Satellite Imagery provided by Dr. Levi Cowan at TropicalTidbits.com. And what we're really going to be discussing for the most part of this video will be Invest 91L that has now a very high chance of becoming our next tropical storm, which would be Francine, impacting the Gulf Coast of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, possibly going to become a hurricane as well over the next 3 to 5 days. And then, of course, out here in the Central Maine Development Region, we have another Invest 92L. We're not going to be discussing about that until the very end of this video, only briefly, since this is no threat to land areas at the moment. And then, of course, there's a third area coming off of Africa that also has a medium to high chance of tropical development in the next 7 days. So here's a closer zoomed in view on Invest 91L for this afternoon in the southern portion of the Gulf of Mexico. And when we examine the satellite imagery here very closely, we're looking for low-level cloud motions here. And what they're telling us right now is that this system is becoming better defined. The system is organizing gradually. And what I mean by that is we have winds out of the southeasterly direction here. Winds curve around sharply here out of the northwesterly and northerly direction here. And so what we end up having here is a elliptical looking area of low pressure. But what we're beginning to start to see here on the imagery is that the low is beginning to consolidate somewhere down here where we have not a whole lot of wind going on, where we have all this deep convection. And there's a very intense deep burst here that has recently exploded in intensity. And you can even see some vigorous overshooting cloud tops on the satellite imagery, indicating that this is trying to get very organized and it's really trying to mature very quickly. Here's another look at it from an IR perspective, satellite imagery. And we can see here very deep cold cloud tops here, as cold as negative 95 degrees Celsius. It's about a negative 120 to negative 135 degrees Fahrenheit. So these are some very tall cloud tops approaching even 150 millibars into the atmosphere. And this means that the system is really trying to intensify. There's a lot of deep hot tower convection here. And what we're going to see is, does this deep convection develop a new surface low underneath it? That is remain to be seen at the moment. But right now what we have is at least something that is becoming more healthier, unfortunately, with winds that are starting to strengthen on the southern and western side of this surface low. Now, from an environmental perspective here, this is a look at the deep layer water vapor imagery from TropicalTidbits.com. And what we have up here is, of course, a lot of drier air over Texas and Louisiana. But what we have also going on here is a nice anticyclonic ridge in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And you can see this outflow starting to get better defined on the western and even trying to attempt that on the northern and southern side. So right now, this is in a very favorable environment that this is able to strengthen and get organized fairly quickly. Here's not much semblance of any westerly shear that is imparting on this system at the moment, and that's how we can tell here is by looking at the deep convection. It's very blobby, it's spreading in all quadrants, and it's not being blown off like what we're seeing up here. This is more asymmetrical due to that westerly flow. So at the moment right now, Invest 91L is looking, unfortunately, promising to really strengthen in a hurry here in the next day or two under these very favorable optimal environmental conditions. Also, what is really helpful in today's video is we have an Air Force 308 reconnaissance mission flying into 91L this afternoon. And so far during their mission, they did find that there might be another surface low developing underneath this deep convection. We have very strong tropical storm force winds on the southwestern side of this. All these orange barbs indicate winds of 50 to even close to 60 knots. That is really strong out of the northwesterly direction. And then we have another surface low that might be a decaying one because there's not a whole lot of deep convection here, but what we also see is that, again, strong winds here, winds tightly curling around from the southeasterly direction. And then again, way up here, we may have another surface flow that is decaying. And so again, we have it is still an elongated area of low pressure, but I'm probably assuming that this area right here that I circled in might be the new area that does develop a central area of low pressure. Therefore, the recon mission did find winds of about 55 knots in their flight level analysis, with surface frequency microwave radiometer winds more in the 45 to 50 knot range. So at the moment, this could be a tropical storm, other than we do not have a very well defined closed off circulation where we have more tight circulation around that deeper convection. But right now, so to speak, this does have tropical storm force winds, and this needs to be taken seriously, folks, as this begins to develop even further. Okay, got some breaking news to share with you all. We now have potential Tropical Cyclone 6. I called it at the very beginning of this video. We have winds of 50 miles an hour, central pressure down to 1,003 millibars, and it is moving to the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. Once again, this is potential Tropical Cyclone 6 now being declared from the National Hurricane Center. Here's a look at the 4 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center on PTC number 6, winds 50, movement to the northwest at 5 miles an hour, and they are showing that this is going to become a hurricane by Wednesday afternoon on approach to southeastern Texas as well as southwestern Louisiana. Anyone living in this cone of uncertainty needs to get prepared for significant impacts. We also have tropical storm watches out for the northeastern coast of Mexico. Right now, not declared a tropical storm, but it's a potential tropical cyclone and is expected to become a tropical storm by tomorrow late morning or early afternoon, possibly even sooner than what this is showing. So everybody needs to be paying close attention to this system. Another product that I wanted to show you all, this is the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds as of this advisory, and right now they are at 30 to 50% chance of tropical storm force winds for Louisiana and southeastern portion there of Texas. All right, there's also a 40 to 50% chance of tropical storm force winds for the northeastern coast of Mexico. So anybody living along the southeastern coast of Texas and Louisiana really needs to be paying close attention to these chances, as tropical storm force winds are possible between Monday night for the southern tip of Texas and Wednesday morning for the southern coast of Louisiana. Looking at the key messages for potential Tropical Cyclone 6, this system is forecast to become a tropical storm on Monday as it moves northwestward near or along the western Gulf Coast. Tropical storm watches have been issued for a portion of northeastern Mexico, and additional watches may be needed for the southern Texas coast tonight. The system is forecast to become a hurricane before it reaches the northwestern Gulf Coast by the middle of the week. While it is too soon to pinpoint the exact location and magnitude of impacts, the potential for life-threatening storm surge, damaging winds, flooding, and other impacts are expected for portions of the upper Texas and Louisiana coasts beginning Tuesday night. Hurricane and storm surge watches will likely need to be needed on Monday, and residents need to ensure they have hurricane plans in place. Potential Tropical Cyclone 6 is expected to bring heavy rainfall and the risk of flash flooding from the coast of far northeastern Mexico into portions of coastal Texas and Louisiana through Thursday. Here's a look at the risk of flash flooding for a given area. Memphis and Jackson in Mississippi and Tennessee are under a slight risk for heavy rainfall and flooding. This could get upgraded to a moderate risk in later outlooks. So if you're in Lake Charles and Houston, you could see more significant flooding yet again. You've seen too much rain, and you're going to see a lot more of it coming. Shreveport and Little Rock under a marginal risk of heavy rainfall. Corpus Christi and Brownville, Texas, under a slight risk of heavy rainfall. So now the question on everybody's mind is, how strong will Invest 91L get, which would be, again, will be dubbed Tropical Storm Francine. I'm very confident in that. Well, latest models differ a little bit, but we're beginning to get a better idea that this could end up becoming a high-end tropical storm with winds of 70, maybe even 65 miles an hour. And when we play this through, we can see again the recon mission that's flying into the system now has found this wind max here. This is very strong, winds of 40 to 50 miles an hour at the surface. So the GFS here seems to initialize this really good based on that recon data. And they found another wind maximum here on the eastern side, but not even as strong as what we have to the southwest. So what ends up happening here on the GFS model overnight tonight is this low does begin to close off a little bit more better. It's not so elongated. It is still somewhat here. You can see the max or the weakest winds here kind of within the remnants of this baroclinic boundary. But what ends up happening is this does close off eventually into a tropical storm, and that's why this will probably end up becoming a tropical storm overnight tonight or even early tomorrow morning. And we can see this by tomorrow afternoon, right around, say, about 2 to 3 p.m. Central and Eastern Daylight Time. Winds here of 40 to 50 miles an hour. So this is pretty robust down here in the southern portion of the Gulf of Mexico and the Bay of Campeche. And then what ends up happening, this is going to ride the coastline, not far offshore, but far enough to where we may get an intercore structure that develops here. So this would have winds of 50 to 60 miles an hour, and this would be for Tuesday late morning, early afternoon on September the 10th, which, by the way, is the peak of the Atlantic hurricane season. This is the peak day when in climatology we see a lot of activity going on in the Atlantic, and this is no exception. We have Tropical Storm Francine here on the GFS producing some formidable winds. Now the concern here is as this pulls away from Mexico in about, say, 60 hours, maybe in the next 3 days, this could strengthen formidably into a probably a low-grade hurricane with winds of 75 to 80 miles an hour. Now, of course, the GFS is really bullish. I've seen a lot of Twitter posts on this that the GFS could be an outlier. That is not surprising because this has been a huge uptrend on the GFS model, but it is worth noting that there is that potential when something like the GFS model shows something like this. This is a high-end case, worst-case scenario type event here, and this has 90-mile-an-hour winds, so this would be a high-end category 1 hurricane, and then eventually potentially becoming a category 2 hurricane approaching Louisiana here. Now, even so, the GFS does explicitly show a very powerful category 2, even a low-grade category 3 hurricane here on the approach to, say, if you're in Cameron, Louisiana, if you're in, say, Lake Charles, Louisiana. Again, showing a major hurricane here or even a high-end or a low-grade category 2 hurricane is possibly still an outlier scenario, and I'm not jumping the gun on this. We could see a hurricane of some magnitude here of winds of, say, 70 to 75 to maybe 80 miles an hour, but a major hurricane at this point is probably an outlying scenario given that the background environment is super favorable, but this could run out of time at the same time. All right, now looking at the European model here, this is a deterministic forecast also showing us the same scenario here. The European model has jumped the gun with the GFS model showing pretty much the same scenario, but compared to the GFS, if we go back and look at 60 hours here, so this is where it's at in 60 hours on the European model. This is where it's at on the GFS. So the GFS is slower than the European model, which explains why the European is a little weaker to begin with. And it's also a little further to the north. So that means less water time over the very warm Gulf waters. But what ends up happening is, again, just like the GFS shows, the European also shows quick deepening and strengthening with the system as it approaches, again, the southern coast of Louisiana. This would be a very serious event by all standards, bringing lots of heavy rainfall, very strong damaging hurricane, tropical storm force winds, storm surge impacts that could be pretty significant here, and of course some freshwater flooding due to the power and nature of how much moisture this is going to have with it. And explicitly, the European model has this borderline or even approaching hurricane intensity with winds of 70 to 75 miles an hour. So even the European model here indicates that this becomes a hurricane. Now, one more model that I wanted to show you too is the Icon model that has been really consistent. The 18Z model run is coming in right now, so we won't be able to show you that in this video. But again, same idea here, showing that the system deepens fairly quickly. This is a little bit even northeast of where the GFS and Euro models have it. But the whole point here being is, again, that deepening does happen here with winds of, say, 50 to 60 miles an hour, possibly peaking at 70 miles an hour. So, in other words, we have almost full confidence that this is going to become a tropical storm, even by tonight or by tomorrow morning, and could be a high-end tropical storm as it approaches Louisiana and even perhaps portions of Texas and even Mississippi. Now, there is a worst case scenario here. This is on the HAVS A model on 91L. Again, this is a hurricane specific model. To be specific, this is I don't know what the AFS stands for, but this is a hurricane model, so it's specific. And so when we go forward, this has more in its early on formative stage. This is a hurricane here with winds of, say, 70 to 80 miles an hour in 33 hours. That is also a possibility here. That's why the hurricane models get ran through, so we get an idea how strong this might end up being. And then once this approaches, say Texas and Louisiana, this could be a 80-mile-an-hour hurricane. This is a strong Category 1 hurricane on approach, and then of course it weakens a little bit before it makes its way onshore of Louisiana, but that might be an understatement because the European and the GFS indicate strengthening up until landfall here, which isn't a surprise of the upper level wind conditions and sea surface temperatures, as well as upper ocean heat content. So now, why does the GFS indicate significant strengthening with 91L? Well, if we take a look at our 200 millibar upper level wind chart here from the GFS model, we can see again that anticyclonic flow that we talked about on the water vapor imagery fanning out with feathery white cirrus indicates a low shear environment. As this goes further to the north, we can see that the pattern does not change very much. Again, look at this. Again, anticyclonic outflow, even upper level cyclonic flow with that outflow around the system. So this is a formidable system with a deeper vortex, and winds do this. So again, very favorable environment here. Not much westerly shear to prevent strengthening. But what's going to end up happening here is in about 3 days, the system is going to be approaching the northern side of this anticyclonic barotropic ridge, that the axis of this is to the south. So what ends up happening is we have background westerly flow on top of the vortex here. And what that ends up doing is we end up getting wind shear or westerly shear. But in relative sense, this would actually be more of a west-northwest shear because the system's doing this and our westerly flow is doing this. So in relative sense, we would end up getting a west-northwest shear of about, say, 15 to 20 knots. Not ideally destructive to this system. That's why the GFS does indicate strengthening here, but it might ceiling the intensity here. So if this was a very low sheared environment, this could theoretically come to Cat 3 or Cat 4 intensity. But because of the westerly flow here, there's going to be a capped out intensity here, somewhere in the high-end tropical storm or low-grade hurricane intensity on the approach to Louisiana. Now, a big concern with this system will be the amount of rainfall and moisture that falls over Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and even southeastern coast of Texas. This is a look at the latest weather prediction model, WPC for short, and what we have here is an average look showing about 3 to 5 inches of rainfall. So again, lots of moisture with this, and possibly up to 8 inches of rainfall over Cameron, Louisiana, as well as Lake Charles, Louisiana. If you're in, say, Baton Rouge and New Orleans, Louisiana, you might end up getting, say, 5+ inches of rainfall. And then, of course, over Mobile, Alabama, you can get some pockets there that you may end up having up to maybe 5 to 7 inches of rainfall. So in other aspects, this is a considerable flood event for these areas, and you have had too much rainfall over Houston, Texas, and unfortunately, much more rainfall is coming with up to maybe 2 to 3 inches of rainfall across upstate Mississippi and Alabama. So of course, with a strengthening tropical storm here on most of the modeling, we have an increased risk of high surf and also some storm surge. This is a look at the significant wave height and direction plot from the European deterministic forecast, showing us how high these waves are going to be. And so in the next 60 hours or so, we have surf up to maybe 10 to 14 feet over here over the northwestern Gulf of Mexico off the Texas coast. And then the surf really picks up as the system deepens. You can see right here, surf possibly up to 16 to 21 feet. With maximum individual wave heights here possibly surpassing 45 to even 50 feet. This would be a catastrophic situation for the coast of Louisiana with very high surf, with very large breaking waves, potentially again up to 50 feet. Maybe more in that range of 40 to 45 feet though, but some peaks there up to maybe 50 feet. And again, on top of the strong winds, a lot of water pushing onshore, we could have a really big situation with storm surge here. So it's not only about the wind and the heavy rain flooding, but also lots of coastal inundation here of storm surge and lots of serious impacts, even from a strong tropical storm or a low-grade hurricane. On the GFS model, a little bit more aggressive here, showing that surf here could be on the approach of 25 to 35 feet high. That is pretty devastating. And as this gets closer and closer to Louisiana, some of the surf here breaks off at about 20 to 30 feet, with some wave heights approaching 35 to 45 feet. So again, catastrophic surf and coastal flooding with storm surge inundation likely with this system. Again, even so, it is a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm. This will do the trick with some serious surf. One other thing that I wanted to show you all is how likely is this going to hit Texas and Louisiana. Again, do not use this map to make decisions. Please seek official info from the National Hurricane Center, your local weather officials, and from your National Weather Service office. This is just model guidance, track guidance, and it is not a forecast. I want to make it very explicitly clear in this video. But this is giving a range of possible outcomes based on our modeling that we have on the 18Z forecast. And what we have here is this could still theoretically hit Houston, Texas directly as a strong tropical storm or a hurricane, versus if this goes further to the east, this could be a stronger hurricane impacting Lake Charles, Louisiana, as well as say Beaumont, Texas, including down here for Cameron, Texas. So again, please do not reverse your preparations, because again, somewhere in this area, this is my general cone of uncertainty, still over the eastern half of Texas and also over central and potentially as far east as say near Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So do not reverse your preparations based on, oh, we know where it's going to make landfall. This could change explicitly. This could actually turn sooner, or it can just turn a lot later. And that's why we make these cones of uncertainty, dealing with the uncertainty in the forecast. So I wanted to make that explicitly clear in this video. Now the intensity forecast remains a bit challenging, but not very, very extremely uncertain like we had with past systems. So the question is, how strong will Invest 91L get? This is the 18Z plot of the ensemble, or kind of an ensemble forecast here from all of our different models, showing that theoretically this may not strengthen at all, but still shows a tropical storm intensity here at the moment. And if it again closes off that surface low, this gets named Francine. And then some of the models going as high as a category 1 and 2 hurricane. So with that being said, I am down the middle of the intensity forecast, and I am forecasting this to become a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane. So in my forecast here, I do expect this to become a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane. Again, repeat, 75-mile-an-hour hurricane, possibly over Beaumont, Texas, and Lake Charles, Louisiana, within the next 60 to 60 hours all the way up to maybe as late as 84 hours out. So anyone living in this area, please get prepared for a strong tropical storm or a low-grade hurricane. Now, one last thing that I wanted to bring up in this video, as I promised at the beginning of the video, if there was a bit of time, there is another area to watch. Invest 92L. This could also get awfully close to these islands. Some of the ensemble members do bring them generally west-northwestward towards the northern windward islands, but most of the tracks here are out to sea. So for the time being, we're not going to really worry much about that system right now, and you also should not worry about it for right now. Instead, we are really going to have to keep an eye on Invest 91L, and therefore a live stream this evening is being considered yet again to address the current intensity and evolution of Invest 91L. Again, our next named storm would be Francine, our 6th letter of the alphabet well, not really in the alphabet because they skipped some letters, but it is our 6th named storm of the 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. Now, to briefly review with what we talked about, again, Texas needs to be on guard with this system for sure, including for Louisiana, as again, we are keeping an eye on Invest 91L in this video. Again, could become our next tropical storm as early as tonight or by early tomorrow morning. This is a very intense, robust circulation with tropical storm force winds happening on the southwestern side of the circulation based on our recon data, and there's increasing deep convection happening now closer to the center. So right now, anyone living in Texas and Louisiana really needs to be paying very close attention, and you can only do that if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button, and share this video with their family and friends on social media, and leave a comment in the section below this video. But otherwise, also check out the National Hurricane Center for latest information on this disturbance. But in the meantime, I might be back this evening with a live stream to address this issue. If not, I will have another update tomorrow.